Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we'll be looking at how you as a developer, you can control your mobile app that's out there, or basically how you can control that without having your users to update your mobile app from the respective app stores. So in this particular tutorial, we'll be using Firebase Remote Config, and it's a really nice service, which I thought I should talk about. Let's get started. So as you can see in my screen, we have like the default Flutter app. As you can see, it's running well on Android and iOS, just the normal counter app. I think most of you guys have interacted with that. And we have already set up Firebase on the app. So if you haven't done so, take some time to do so. I also have the code on GitHub, so you can just clone the repo and look at it. So yeah, I've already connected the app to Firebase. So I'll briefly talk about what we're going to do, and then head over to the Firebase console where we can get started and set up the remote config, and then come basically retrieve the values from our mobile app, basically control our app. So let's get started. So in today's particular video, we'll be looking at how we can change the theme color, for example, from blue to red. As you can see, the app looks nice, changes well, and we'll be looking how you can do that from a remote place, and having your users app change according to your specifications, basically controlling your app. Yeah, so Firebase Remote Config is a service by Google and Firebase. Let's just head over to the site, which allows you to customize and experiment your app behavior with server-side configuration and feature flags. So it's a really nice service, and I think you guys should try it. Let's head over to the Firebase console right here. Let's go to remote config. Just click on the build section, then click on remote config. Make sure your app is connected to Firebase before you can do this. Then create configuration, and also make sure you've enabled analytics in your Firebase console for the sole purpose of targeting and stuff. So let's create a parameter. Let's give it a name. Let's say primary color. Primary color. Data type needs to be a string. For the description, let's just give it a short description. And the default value, let's say blue, because it's my favorite color. Let's save that. Let's publish the changes. Now that I've published the changes, all this information is available to our app to fetch. All you have to do is to set up the configuration in the mobile application so that you can fetch it. So let's head over to our app. Let's create a service. Let's call it remote config service. And in our remote config service, we'll have to import two dependencies. We'll have to import the Firebase remote config, then import riverpod annotation. So we'll be using riverpod to make sure that our service is accessible throughout the app through like widget ref. So let's import I'm also using GitHub Copilot, so I'd highly recommend that. Let's import riverpod annotation. Like that. Let's create a path, remote config service.d. So this will be the generated file, and let's annotate our fetch function at riverpod. Let's give it a name. So this will be our riverpod method that will fetch us the string from basically our riverpod method that will help us to fetch the string from Firebase Remote Config. So we give it a feature string type, and let's call it fetch. So riverpod supports quite a number of, let me say, data types, one of them being string. You can fetch Boolean, JSON, and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, so to import that, let's import Flutter riverpod. Let's make the method asynchronous. And before we fetch our value, we'll need to get, before we fetch our value, we'll need the key. Let's define the key. Let's make it a required parameter. Required string key. So I think we first have to instantiate the Firebase remote config, just like that. Then activate it. But before activate it, let's give it like some config settings. So just like that. Copilot is really nice. I love it. And for the minimum fetch interval, let's give it like seconds, 10 seconds, so that you can be able to fetch as frequently as possible. You can be able to refresh it on the device as frequently as possible. Then here we'll have to return the remote config to get string key. So just like that, guys, we've created a method that will allow us to fetch strings from Firebase remote config. So let's run our code generator. Let me adjust this. Sun Flutter pub run build runner build. Let's give it a second. See that it has generated this code for us, which basically gives us the provider, which is called the fetch string config provider, and it's an auto dispose feature provider, which will basically allow us to fetch this string from Firebase. So let's go to our main.dat file. Make sure that Firebase is initialized correctly after the widget's Flutter binding and show initialized method, and then wrap your my application with the provider scope, which will allow the app to access all riverpod states throughout the app, all riverpod classes, I mean. And in the my app folder, see that we have our colors.red, which is statically defined. Let's wrap this up with a consumer. And now let's add the two params like that. Let's get a variable color. Let's use ref.watch. Ref.watch allows us to basically constantly listen to new changes, but you can use ref.read. Since we'll not be listening to new changes every time, let's just use ref.read. But it will be fetching. Since it will be fetching, we have to constantly observe for the changes. So let's use ref.watch. Ref.watch fetch config string provider. This has been generated by let me say, it has been generated by our riverpod generator. Let's do that. Let's look at this code. If it's loading, let's just use maybe when, so that we can just handle one case. or else, which is the default case, let's just return our default color red. On data, which is a string, let's create a utility which allows us to change values from string to color. Let's create a method get color. Like that. Let's generate all the colors that we need. I want to generate more colors. Let's give it some time to, like that. Yeah, like that. Let's go back to our main.dat, get color, data. And just like that, it will be able to convert our color to the way we want it. Let's change this parameter to color so that it will use this color. Let's go to our remote config service and see everything is set up correctly. What's our key? Color. No, our key is primary color, as you can see right here. Let's just copy that. Change our key to primary color. And just like that, you see that our app has changed to color blue because it has fetched that. If we look at our Safari, our browser, you see that we have color blue and the color has changed as we expected it to change. So let's try to change the color to a different color. Let's say if you want like a green color. Let's restart our app. Okay, in our Android, it has changed to green. In our iOS, let's see, it has also changed to green. So as you've seen, guys, the colors have changed like the way we expected it to change, though, based on our configuration. So we've just seen how you can change the colors from basically from the theme colors based on like your remote configuration. What if we want the colors to change, or we want something to change in the app on the fly, like instantly? So we can use streams. And good thing, the good team at Firebase really did some good work on that and made sure that Firebase Remote Config supports real-time configuration. So you can change your values and they'll be available to users on the fly. So let's see how we can do this. So we'll go back to our remote config service that we just created a few seconds ago, and we'll create another method at riverpod. Let's call the method, it's a stream, so let me just close this terminal. Let's say stream. Instead of a future now, we use a stream which returns a string. Fetch string configuration string. Let's see. Everything is good up to this point, and from this point we'll have to add a listener. So to add a listener, which basically constantly listens for changes, we'll have to use remote config dot on on config updated, listen. So once the config is updated, we can call this method again. Basically kind of like recursion. So let's just refresh this. Let's first generate the code. Run Flutter pub run build runner build. You can use Flutter pub run build runner watch, but it's kind of heavy on memory. And yeah, since I'm recording the screen and everything, it might be a little bit laggy. So now that I've generated the code, you can come here and refresh the provider generated for this. In this case, we'll use ref refresh. Just like that. Let's go back to our main.dat file and change our value from fetch config string provider to fetch string config string provider that we just generated. And like that, just like that, when we change our values, for example, from green to, let's say, red, and we publish the changes, we'll see that our app will reflect the new changes, as you have seen right here. So let's do it again. Let's change it. For example, let me minimize my screen so that you can be able to see the values change on the fly. Let me also put my Android screen here. Let's change the value to purple. Publish the changes. And just like that, guys, the colors have changed. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. In the next video, I'll talk more of maybe advanced concepts. Maybe if you want to target like the remote config for a specific user group, basically A/B testing and things like that, or users in a specific region and things like that. So bye.